Yeah, pretty big news across yesterday and including today about the Dubbo Drug Court. As former Mayor Matt Dickerson is coming, we're going to talk about those technical topics soon with Tech Talk. But just ahead of that, Matt, it'd be quite interesting to get your feelings after, advocating and being as Dubbo Mayor for a while. This is great news for the region.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember during my time as Mayor, I met with the magistrate of the day to express concerns from the community about the crime and some of the recidivist crime that was occurring or people that were involved in recidivist crime. And certainly there were concerns in the community. The magistrate told me I had no place talking to him about sentencing and to get back in my box essentially. But I felt it was my job to express those concerns on behalf of the community because there were valid concerns there. The data that I've read about a drug court certainly indicates, and all the information's there, you've got to base these decisions on data. All the information is there about the fact that it will reduce crime, which is what the average person on the street wants to see. They want to see less crime. They want to see less victims or fewer victims of crime. Obviously, the announcement's one thing, and I suppose the next part is it's all well and good sometimes for our governments, our politicians to stand there and say we announce whatever might be happening. I haven't seen in the announcement the actual commencement, and you might have that information there, I'm not sure, but I haven't seen when it will commence, and so that's a really important part. Yes, great, it's fantastic, it's coming, but it might be 10 years away. So when is it actually coming? When will it start? Because we won't see any change in those crime rates until the drug court starts, and then even then we won't see immediate change. It obviously takes time to filter through. So good step one, let's hope step two is not too far away.
New South Wales Deputy Premier on the program yesterday saying it's over 4 years, this amount that they've released yesterday with that announcement. But probably a bit remiss of me for not asking, well, when do we see that? I know that $7.5 million was announced in November 2020 on the Richard Purno Breakfast Show here at 2DU, and that was from John Barilaro back then.
Yep.
And I believe there is a picture now in the paper where we can see the new building just behind the people of the paper, of course, when they've come out. So that is an interesting question. From
the skeptic in me there might say that they might be re-announcing things, because sometimes we do see politicians make an announcement and then they make a further announcement of the same money and then a further announcement of the same money and then they cut the ribbon on the same money they've announced 3 times earlier. So again, what we want to see as a community is just action. You can talk as much as you like, but actions really speak louder than words.
And that skeptic in you was saying, well, this is just ahead of a mid-June hand down of a state budget as well, right?
It may well be that.
All right.
Putting words in my mouth there.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But I know that other people have that same sentiment, and it has been mentioned since yesterday, and even prior to yesterday, with the possibility of an announcement coming really soon. So again, I like to think that the state member, Dougal Saunders, even Troy Grant, I know did a lot of knocking on doors in regards to that over the years. I'm going to talk with the president of the Orana Law Society, Andrew Boog, later on this morning at about 8:10. But he was saying on the phone yesterday, well, he was already talking to Troy Grant before Troy Grant was even elected into office. So that's over a decade now. So,
yeah, it's been going a while. And I've certainly met with Andrew Boog as well and discussed specifically the drug court with him and got the information. But again, it is a state issue. You have to, as mayor, I didn't have the power to flick a switch and make the drug court occur. All I could do was advocate and try and get things to happen, and that's what this council's continued on to do. Stephen Lawrence has obviously been advocating for this for some time, but ultimately the state government runs our legal system in this state, so they need to be the one to step up and actually run this process, which again, they've announced that, but let's see them do it.
Put the money where the mouth is.
No, something like that.
Yeah, putting words into your mouth again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Breakfast is Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk, Tech Talk with Matthew Dixon.
It is a very good morning to you, Matt. Tech Talk, I love talking to you. I really enjoyed last week's conversation as well. And it got me thinking a little bit because I went and had my blood pressure checked yesterday, not getting a lot of sleep, filling in for the Richard Purno breakfast show. And there's a lot of me, trying to look for new stuff and, content for my show. And I seem to be on the phone a lot and I can't sleep. Is that something that I guess everyone experiences that if you're using your technology at night before you go to bed? Not good for the body.
No, there's some surveys that have just come out that have indicated that we aren't getting enough sleep as Aussies in general. But, and I think this is really harsh because I'm a technology fan, 89% of Aussies are blaming technology for their lack of sleep. And there's some logic around that. People jump into bed and they snuggle down and pull the doona up in winter and then they go, I'll just check something on my phone. and they do what's often called doom scrolling, where you start scrolling and looking through some feeds, and next thing you know, you've dived down this rabbit hole and you're watching some video on something happening in some foreign country. You go, how did I get here? What happened? And you've kind of jumped from one link and something else has occurred, you've gone somewhere else. So you end up spending too much time before you go to sleep. And then for many people, they've got their charger beside the bed, they put it on the charger, they go to sleep, they wake up in the morning, the first thing they do, before they even think about what am I doing for the day, what's the weather like, they reach across to their phone and then check their phone before they even turn on 2U, believe it or not. So it's something that people do blame on that. When you go to the younger age group, so just past our age group, Brett, when you get to the 18 to 29-year-old age bracket, so ones that we've just gone past recently, that bracket there blames, or 94% of that age bracket blames technology for their lack of sleep. And about a third of Aussies are getting not enough sleep. So there's a lot of people out there not getting enough sleep, and technology, well, so the surveys are saying, is to blame. I'd hate to think technology would be causing these problems in our society, but it does make sense when you're looking at that light at the end of the day, when you're looking at that bright light. So there are phone manufacturers who've tried to introduce things like blue light to actually reduce the light, calm down the brightness on your phone to do it. But the real thing here is just the stimulation in general.
Is that why they've got dark modes now, also like in browsers and stuff like that on your phone, or is that just to make it easier to read it?
Well, dark mode, there's a couple of things with that. One is that it does make it not as bright facing the screen. It also is better for battery life. It can also be used in things like when you shouldn't be checking your phone in the cinema or in a play, then you can do that in dark mode. It's not as bright. But you've got things like
in a breakfast interview.
That's right. Yeah, sorry, I'll put my phone away. So I think the idea is that the phone manufacturers are trying to do things, and they've also got well-being apps to try and say that you've been using the phone too much today. Look at how many hours you spent doing various activities. But ultimately, humans are making these choices about what they're doing, so we can't stop that. If they want to check their phone, they can. But it is having a negative impact on our general health and well-being because we are spending so much time checking it.
And I guess the other problem is, unless you put your phone into silent, it vibrates, makes noises. If you have young children and they hear that, that probably disrupts their sleep. And even worse, if you give them a pad at night, an iPad or a tablet or whatever to let them fall asleep. I won't mention who, but someone that I'm around a lot, I won't say it's my godson's parents, because they leave videos running for them all night. That's a little bit different because it's on a TV screen, but that certainly can't be good for children's health.
Well, it's not that different, actually. They did talk in this particular survey when the experts were being interviewed about it. They talked about the fact that maybe 10 years ago you didn't have your phone in your hand in the bed, but sometimes people put a TV in their bedroom, and the same thing happened. They'd have the TV, they've got the bright lights, and their mind's being stimulated with all of that, and so that keeps them a bit more awake. And then even when they turn the TV off, their mind's thinking about what they watched on TV. There was some mystery on, they were trying to solve the issue with that, so their mind's thinking when they should be just relaxing. So the idea is, and far be it for me to say this, Brett, it seems unusual, but some of the experts are saying a good old-fashioned book. Go to bed with a book and read a few pages of a book.
Sorry, mate.
I know.
What's a book? I don't know.
And I'm not talking about a book on a Kindle because you've still got that screen that's right there, but just something nice and simple like that, or even just going to bed and just relaxing a bit, breathing nicely, and then off to sleep. So it's interesting that the technology is being blamed a lot for it. It really comes down to humans' behaviour, but poor old technology, I'm a fan of it, and it's being blamed for all this terrible behaviour for Aussies.
It's funny that you say about your charger, because you've got chargers for your smart watches and that sort of thing now, and you can recharge your, what are they called, your earbuds, and I don't own any of those, but for those people lucky enough that have saved money to do that, it's all part and parcel of the whole thing. I know you're not a health expert, but what should we do to give us a break away from that? Should we turn it off at night and say after 9 o'clock, or even earlier for kids, no more technology?
Well, that's a good advice, but also the second part of the advice there is move your phones, move your devices out of the bedroom, because we can't help ourselves. If the phone's there beside the bed charging up, and maybe you do get some alert during the middle of the night from one of your great friends in the US of A or wherever it might be overseas, it's putting some message up on your phone, then taking it out of the bedroom is important, because we can't help ourselves. Remove it somewhere else, let it charge. And if you're worried about you might get a phone call in the middle of the night that's an urgent phone call, still leave it on ring, and if the phone call comes through, that's fine. But you can stop your notifications from just things like emails, those things that are typically not urgent things in the middle of the night. But that's probably the best advice that the health experts have given, is move those things out of the bedroom, because if you've got it there charging up, you can't help yourself but reach across and look at things.
Yeah, but Matt, Siri or Bixby on the phones won't be able to tell me what time it is if I'm snoozing after and I can't reach my phone, right?
Well, that's it, and part of that advice is maybe get a good old-fashioned alarm clock. I mean, most people use their
What's
phones.
an alarm clock?
I know.
Yeah, my phone gives me 2 or 3 alarms.
Well,
It's
and that's
great.
it. Most people use their phone for
Yeah,
their
for that.
alarm.
Mm.
So if you do move it out of the bedroom, you've got to have an alternative to get you up. Or if you move it far enough away that you can't reach for it,
Yeah.
the other great thing about that is if the alarm goes off, I always say that make an alarm so that you've got to get out of bed to turn it off, because if you can turn it off from in bed, you might just hit that snooze on the alarm.
Yeah, we won't talk about me running late for 2 to your breakfast at all about that, will we? Let's move on to the next thing. I know it's been pretty huge with the Australian Federal Police teaming up with the FBI in America over a couple of years. I think I was watching a news report the other day and suggesting that let's come up with this app, we'll put it on the black market, we'll let all of these bad people in the world share it. For 3 or 4 years later, we'll end up monitoring this for that long, and now we'll go and arrest people. A lot of technology goes into creating and building an application, whether it's for a computer or now for our phones and mobile devices. I mean, this is big news, and this is great to combat that sort of thing and try to monitor that sort of thing. But who's the maker of these sorts of things? They've got to be pretty smart, don't you think?
Oh, they do. They've certainly been their focus for a long time. It does remind me a little bit of the Second World War story with Alan Turing and Enigma, breaking the Enigma code from the Germans when they were sending all their messages. Now, the Germans were sending messages in the full knowledge that all their messages were very secure and secret. And of course, Alan Turing and the code breakers at Bletchley Park broke that code, and they were just reading all these messages from the Germans, and they were well ahead of what was going on. Well, the FBI and the Australian Federal Police and the Canadian Police that built this app were one step further ahead than Alan Turing. They didn't actually manage to break a code, they wrote the code. So they actually hired a hacker, a convicted hacker. They offered him a reduced sentence, and they also paid him $120,000. He was quite happy with that, yeah.
Right.
His name has not been released for some strange reason, I'm not sure why. And the thing I loved about this story was not only did they write the app that was put forward as a very secure messaging app for the underworld, not only did they distribute phones around for these underworld figures to use, but they were charging the underworld figures a subscription fee to use it. So they were being paid by the crims, and then obviously they were sitting there and monitoring something like 20 million messages they monitored. And again, what they found was these underworld figures were chatting very openly, very brazenly about hits they were putting on people, about drugs. They weren't using any code words, because as far as they were concerned, this app called Anom, A-N-0-M, Anom, this is the greatest app ever. It's very secure, we can use it. The phones they were given were jailbroken phones, and all that means is the normal operating system is removed of it, whether it be an Android or an iOS operating system was removed of it, and a different operating system was put on, and the phone was useless as a phone. It couldn't make phone calls, send text messages, it couldn't read GPS messages to see where someone was. It was only useful for this one app, this Anom app. So this became the app of choice for anyone in the underworld. So use this for everything. And then of course they did a raid, 800 people so far have been arrested, I think 45 million in cash in Australia alone has been seized, tons of drugs, approximately 150 murders have been prevented. So it's great news, but I think we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg here. I think there'll be more arrests, more information we'll see come out of this. But what a great scheme that they set up there.
And over a couple of beers, I love that story. Let's get together and we'll do it. But I'm glad that we were at the forefront. The AFP people that were involved with that, because that really puts us at the forefront of crime fighting right across the globe. And I know that they had help from the FBI in developing, and as you said, Canadian troops as well. But I think it's just an amazing story, and they've done really well. I guess that subscription fee that these bad people were paying, did that pay the $120,000 to this?
I think it would have, because they had about 12,000 of these phones out there in the criminal world, and they were paying. It wasn't like a $2 a month subscription fee. They paid about $1,000 or a bit more than $1,000 a year for a subscription fee, and the crims were happy to pay it because this was such a good app. It was such a secure app. No one could see what we're doing. I'll pay that $1,000 easily. So yeah, theoretically, the amount that they generated from that subscription fee. So I love the irony. Imagine one of those criminals that was arrested finding out that they paid money to use an app that just fed the information straight to the authorities.
Maybe this is why we don't know the gentleman or lady's name that got paid this money.
I dare say there's probably a price on his head at the moment from some of those underworld figures.
Jeez, you'd want to run away. You'd want to be in jail to get away from all of these people, wouldn't you? Matt Dickerson, thanks very much for coming in. You'll be with Richard Perno in safe hands again next week, but I appreciate the last couple of weeks with you.
Look, I'll miss you next week, Brett.
Oh, I miss talking to you too. I love these chats.